Now, with coverage you trust, this is 10 News Conference.
Education becoming one of the most controversial topics in Rhode Island. These are teachers and protesters outside a Board of Education meeting where the contract for the Education Commissioner was being considered and renewed. This morning on 10 News Conference, we have as our guest the chair of the Board of Education, Eva-Marie Mancuso. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Bill.
Jim Terraconi's not here. He's on assignment. You are in the center of everything all of a sudden. This, first of all, the combination of the two education boards was something that you had initially not been in favor of.
Right.
And then they come together, and now you're the boss. So, do you think it's a good thing now that you're running it?
I do. Well, it's not even just that I'm running it, but originally, and I think a lot of it happened in the last hours of the session. So when you're not part of the discussion, it always feels funny when somebody is thrusting things upon you. So when I testified before the legislature, that's kind of the position I was in. It was more defensive than anything else, just saying, wait a minute, what are we trying to do here? As the legislation formed, and now with it in place, it's really ceremonial in terms of what's happening nationally. We're only one of 2 states in the country that have taken the lead on this pre-K through 20 initiative, where we have one board, and we're really the only board in the country that actually has governing authority over the higher education as well as K through 12 elementary. So it's
it makes
very
sense
interesting
somehow, because I mean, they're certainly 2 different animals, aren't they?
If you keep it as a policy board and don't start talking about, whether or not we're going to have, juice boxes in the 3rd grade, or whether we're going to teach Spanish to all kids in 1st grade, and start talking about the specifics, then it's all very manageable. And it's really, really important, because what I'm finding now is nationally, if you look at what happens with kids in the elementary schools, it really tells what the turnout's going to be in college. That's the discussion that we've been having. So with one board, we have all of the stakeholders around the table, the 3 college presidents, the Commissioner for Elementary and Secondary Education, and hopefully soon a Commissioner for Higher Education.
Right, so what does the college president have to offer to the elementary school?
Oh boy, so much, and I'll tell you why. We had the discussion just at one of our work sessions. President Dooley, we were talking about chronic absenteeism and a question of whether or not that's an issue, whether how many days from school kids can miss and still have issues going on. President Dooley said, wait a minute, I was just reading a study that talks about the effect on higher education of completion. And so when you look at college completion, this one study he had pointed out talked a lot about looking at kids in the early ages and if they're successful going forward. So it was astonishing, and I sat back and I said, this is exactly what the legislature and the governor anticipated with having one board, that in fact we would have these kinds of discussions. The other thing that I see down the road, and it is down the road at this point, is having a funding formula and having what I call strategic finance in place, so that we systematically put money into education. It may be right now, you can obviously keep putting money in, but it has to be done in a strategic way. For instance, looking at the all-day kindergarten, looking at the money for early child development. Why is that so important? We say, okay, well, I come from the higher education side. Why is that so important? Because kids are starting school with a disadvantage, and we need to make sure that we do whatever we can do so that all children have that basic training early on. They have so many words that they should say by a certain level, and that's what the experts say in the area. So that's important, because think about the end result. Why are we talking about having high school graduation requirements? Because 75% of our high school kids need remediation at the community college. Kids are using Pell Grant dollars to remediate. They're going to the community college for a year or 2, trying to get classes that they really should have gotten in the high school, and sometimes skills they should have gotten in elementary school. So it all fits together perfectly if you look at it from a policy side.
So then, Do you have any control over the funding? I mean, do you become a lobbyist for education when it comes to the governor putting his budget together?
Yes, it's all part of it. And Governor Chafee has been terrific. I mean, really, he has put in, and I wrote the numbers down because they were so significant to me. Since he's been in office, $115 million in public K through 12 and higher education. He's fully funded every year, and obviously the legislature has too, but in his budget, he's fully funded the education requirements for K through 12, and also put money back into higher education. Remember, we had several years where we were getting cut, and tuition was going up and up and up. And now Governor Chafee reversed that 3 years ago. So I'm proud to say that this year we have no tuition increase, either for in-state or out-of-state, at any of our college or
CCRI, RIC, and URI.
Right across the board. And URI is using that. If you're in New Jersey and you drive by those big markers on the road, you know, that swirl with the message, URI is doing advertising there because we're one of the only states in the country that is holding tuition for out-of-state as well as in-state. So it's very, very important that we stay as I say, lean and mean and cut back on some of the administrative costs and do things better together so that we can make sure that, that our students are getting what they need to do.
Now, you just returned from Chicago.
I did.
2 days you were out there.
I did.
Commissioner Gist was with you.
Right.
So was
Dr. Callahan.
Who is, and Governor Chafee.
And Governor Chafee.
So the four of you out there.
Right.
Must have been an interesting plane ride. We were sitting next to each other.
It was terrific.
Yeah,
it was terrific.
But isn't Dr. Callahan been one of the most vehement, outspoken critics of Deborah Gist?
Not Deborah Gist. You know, not the policies of Deborah Gist. Some of the way that Deborah Gist has implemented things, both unions have had a problem with in terms of the implementation part. But when we sit down and talk about policy and what needs to happen for the state, that's what's so dynamic about this board. We all agree. We agree we have to have excellent teachers. We agree we have to have a funding formula that makes sense. We agree that we have to have a diploma that makes sense.
But you still have the union saying,
sure,
outside, anybody but Gist almost. Now, is it just a personality conflict, or is it her strategy, the way that she goes about trying to achieve these common goals? Well,
I like to talk about the future and not the past. And so what we did is we said, when Commissioner Gist first came in, she had put forth an evaluation for herself that every 3 months she would sit down and meet with the stakeholders, the people running the board, and say, you know, what am I doing well? What do we need work with? That was never implemented. So I'm going to implement that because I think it's important. It's like anything else, Bill. If you attack a problem head on from the beginning, as it starts percolating, rather than when it's at the end result and we have people with bullhorns and screaming outside meetings, I think you have more of an opportunity to address some of the common problems that we have. It's more in the way that she has implemented or wanting to implement some of the policies than the policies themselves.
But she had asked for people to give her a review.
Right.
A report card, as it were, on a regular basis.
Well, I don't call it a report card. I don't like report cards.
Well, and so it wasn't her fault that the reviews weren't taking place. What do you think it is that the unions that they don't like about her? This testing thing is clearly something that they feel is an affront to teachers in some way.
I don't know if it's an affront to teachers. It's the implementation of these things. Teachers believe in tests. That's what teachers do. I mean, think about our own experience in school. Teachers test all the time. That's not the issue. The issue is when you're putting together which tests to use and how to implement them, teachers need to be a focal part of that discussion. And I believe they have been on some instances, but not enough on the other. The other thing that's happened as well is that people began having different camps. So as dissension came in through the ranks, there was a feeling that the Department of Education wasn't hearing that dissension. And again, if you're sitting down and talking to people every 3 months and, and having a frank discussion about issues as they're percolating, I think it gives us an opportunity to address it. So I say, push the restart button. We've got our leader. Let's move forward. Let's have those meaningful conversations, and let's show our teachers that, in fact, the Board of Education heard what you had to say. We know you're the people that are important to implement the policy, and let's start over again. Let's go forward. Let's go forward. Let's not go backwards and say, you know, she's here. We voted. She's going to be here for 2 years. So let's work together and try to attack the problem together.
All right, we'll have more to talk about with Eva Mancuso right after these commercial messages.
You know,
We're talking with Eva Mancuso, who is the chairperson of the Board of Education, the newly formed Board of Education. Did you talk to George Carullo before you took this job?
I did.
And what did he tell you about? Because he was the leader of the Board of Regents for
Elementary and secondary, and then he was going to do this originally. And when Governor Chafee first met with me, I thought he was asking me to be on the board because it wasn't announced yet that George wasn't going to be able to fulfill his obligation here as well as in his private practice. So the first person, so I didn't talk to him before I took the position, but I did talk to him right afterwards. I spent about a month on what I call a listening tour, talking to all people that had anything to do in any way with education in the state. And I spent about 2.5 hours with George, and he was great. He was very helpful.
And what was the best advice he gave you?
The best advice he gave me, I'm doing right now. He told me not to wear
Talking
rhodey
to Bill
blue.
Rapley.
No, not to wear rhodey blue as much because I was seen as an advocate just for URI, and that I had to make sure that I covered the other
Some of
things.
the other
so
colors.
I said, well, blue's a really good color on me, and I do bleed rhodey blue. And he said, oh, don't say that either.
Oh.
No, it was more technical in terms of ideas on how to build the system. He's a really bright guy, and we sat down and had different models out. So it was a more technical discussion than it was on personalities or philosophies. And he said that, you know, as I started developing the model going into the next part of this, which I call, it's like a 3-part approach that I've taken. One was to get Commissioner Kiss' contract done. Second is to get somebody in for the higher education piece. And then third is to build the model, which we'll do this summer at our retreat in August. And I've already started doing that. And he was really helpful at putting that together, so yeah.
Are you a fan of charter schools?
I'm not a fan, but I'm not against them. I don't want to build a separate series of facilities just for the sake of doing it. I like the fact that we can use them as laboratories to see what works and what doesn't work. I like the in-district charter schools the best. A place like the Laborers Academy in Cranston, where we're servicing a group of kids that may not have been successful in the public schools. So I like them more as an alternative school than as a second model in every group.
What about school choice? What do you think of the various legislative approaches to giving parents choices as where their kids can go to school?
I'm not in favor of vouchers, if that's what you're asking. I don't think we should use public money to
supplement
fund
the Catholic schools.
Right, I just don't. And I went to a Catholic elementary school. It's not a personal issue. It's more of a philosophical. We only have a certain number of dollars billed, and the more we shave off those dollars to do something other than invest in what we already have set up, I think it takes away from the community itself. And that's with charters and everything else. Charters do serve a purpose. It's a great place to have for a laboratory, but we can't all of a sudden have every community have 5 and 6 and 7 charter schools and then try to fund the public schools as well. It doesn't make sense to me. I talked to you before about strategic finance, and that's what we have to look at. There's only a finite number of taxpayer dollars, and we've got to use that in a very effective way for all of the kids for our state.
So why would you be opposed to for-profit universities?
Oh, for-profit universities have a whole different model. Those two, to me, don't even go together.
Okay.
I don't see I see the charter schools still, they're still public schools. For-profit universities are in the business model of making money. That's what they do. They're not in the business of educating kids and graduating them within 6 years, which is what the number is right now. there's no, it's the free market enterprise in terms of the public institutions.
But aren't a lot of businesses in favor of these schools that are basically glorified vocational schools, or that are teaching the skills that they need employees to have?
You're talking apples and oranges. One is a vocational training school that we have with things like the Laborers Academy and
I'm thinking more in the secondary, in college level.
in the higher education end, we have a lot of those partnerships with the Labor Institute and the community college working together. So you have that public-private partnership. That's very different than Newmont University and the public, what appears to be a public for-profit higher education institution. They're colleges. They're out there marketing themselves going forward. So
But Newmont University, right? They teach computer skills, right?
They're a college.
And you wouldn't like to see them locate here?
Their mission, as I understand it, is for profit, which means they have people that invest in that to earn money. That's very different than not-for-profit. All of our public private schools, our private schools, our university, Johnson and Wales, all of the private, Salve Regina, Bryant University, they all used to be public. They also used to be for-profit at one point in time. They're not anymore. They transitioned over, and we embrace that. So
I know, but isn't it sort of a distinction without really any relevance? Brown University is a not-for-profit institution with billions of dollars in an endowment. They make a lot of money. They just don't
and they also
pay shareholders.
And what do they do with their money?
They give a lot of scholarships.
They give it to the kids.
Well, and they have very nice campuses.
Right, which is all part of it. You know, if you've been on a college tour lately with anyone, as I have been with my children, you will know that's all part of the package. Kids want to show up and see the infrastructure. It's important to have look at Rhode Island College, beautiful new recreational facility.
Yeah.
You say to yourself, well, recreational facility, yeah, it's part of going to college, is being able to work out in a place that's clean and new and safe. URI to bring in athletes. We're breaking ground on a new facility involving the weight room for our athletes. Why? Because it's important. That's what they look at in a school. So school isn't just about the academics. It's also about the buildings, the infrastructure, the campus, the dorms, the food. The food, I find the most amazing part of it all is that kids are talking, they give surveys to kids. I mean, they never gave us a survey when we went to college. you got it, and I don't remember anybody saying, boy, this food is really great. Now they're ranked. I was over at Roger Williams University for a meeting at the law school, and I couldn't believe they had a sushi bar and they had all this other stuff. And then I went to URI and I said, we've got the same thing on the Publix. It's very different than when we went to school.
We have to take another break. We will continue our conversation with the chairperson of the Board of Education, Eva-Marie Mancuso.
You can watch this program again on our website, turnto10.com. We also have an archive of past programs. Click on Politics.
And welcome back to our final segment of 10 News Conference. We're talking to Eva-Marie Mancuso, the dynamic chair of the Board of Education. A lot of problems to solve. We were talking about private schools and private colleges versus public. The state really needs to keep its education standards up to be able to compete with these private schools. It takes more than money. Also, do you think, we were talking a little bit about the project proposed for nursing a building, that would involve two different public schools to do that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think what you're going to see, and Governor Chafee started this conversation saying that, if you want us to invest in higher education, you have to keep tuition level. We can't just keep investing money in and having it go up. And a perfect example of the way we can work together is the nursing facility. For the third and fourth year in nursing, we really need to have simulated hospital rooms, and I call them the work dummies. They're like $50,000 each.
Mannequins, right.
The mannequins to work on. And we can't build one for URI, for Rick, and for the community college. So what do? We start to work at these partnerships. And you know what, when you talk to people, I had a great meeting last week with President Mack, Bryant University. They have the same interests that we do. When you start talking to, I've talked a little bit to Dan Egan with his consortium of the private schools. We're all facing the same issue. We've got to work better with the education dollar, because it's not just state funds, but it's Pell Grants, it's kids coming out of school with huge loans and debt. So how do we do that from a higher education side? We do things more effectively, and the way we do that is to work together.
So this would not just be a joint effort between two public schools. It also might involve a private developer, no? To do the nursing school.
Yes, I mean, I would assume that there's going to be private. There's lots of different discussions going on right now. We had a meeting with Brown University, a terrific meeting, in terms of using part of their facility and us working together with them. I had the meeting with Bryant. They're interested in working both with URI and with Rick to develop their nursing school. So
how would that work? How does a public school get to work with a private school?
It's very easy, memorandums of agreement. We do it right now. We just did one for the Board of Education with Rhode Island College and St. Joseph's School of Nursing for our nurse practitioner program, and developing. It's the Doctorate of Nursing for practitioners, and we just did that at our board meeting about 2 months ago, and that's exactly what we do. It's a memorandum of understanding back and forth. The students actually graduate with a Rhode Island College degree, but it's actually done by the doctors, the professors at the private school. So it's a public-private partnership.
So do you think that we could see a URI and a Rick nursing school built down in the Jewelry District?
I do.
And do you see a timetable on that? Do you see any light at the end of that?
I do. I think that it's really important to get the details worked out first, rather than run forward and let's build something and go from there. And those conversations are ongoing on a weekly basis, I would say at this point. Dr. Dooley, President Cariolo, sitting down with other members of not only the board and the governor's office, but also the legislature, so that we can have an open and transparent discussion about what it's going to cost, how long it's going to take to do, and also what it's going to service. The Hospital Association was very helpful in helping us provide statistics as to what is the nursing field going to look like over the next 5 to 7 years. We know there's a shortage coming, but what types of nurses are we going to need? Are we going to need CNAs, or are we going to need doctors of nursing? And what do we need in each category?
So we only got a couple minutes left. Talk a little bit about how important politics is to this effort to improve education. It certainly, we've seen a lot of people come out in the streets in the last few months over education issues, and that must be in some ways encouraging to you.
It's very encouraging to me, and I see it as an opportunity. I don't see it as a problem at all. The more people around the table, the better. Education affects everyone. It is the single biggest, most important factor in economic development for our state. Like myself, a lot of Rhode Islanders aren't going anywhere. So we need to all come together to understand the issues and to have an open and honest conversation about what the pluses are and the minuses are. I don't like to see it divisive in what we saw with the Commissioner Gist contract. Hopefully those days are behind us and we can sit down and argue in a room and come out as a team and say we wrestled with a lot of those ideas, but this is what we all came out with because it's what's in the best interest of our kids. There are so many people that have great ideas around education. My skill set, my role is, as the leader, is to do that, is to facilitate and to negotiate and do everything that my legal education trained me to do. So I like it. I think it's very important. Politics is a good thing. I put a small p with that. The more people that weigh in on the issues, gives you different ideas.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Everybody in Rhode Island wishes you good luck.
Thank you. I got the Kevlar.
Thanks for coming with us. That's 10 News Conference. Thank you very much for joining. Have a happy Father's Day. Almost forgot that.